The Oscar Pistorius trial that is currently underway has drawn comparisons to the O.J. Simpson trial that gripped the world's attention in 1995. There is, however, one marked difference between these two court cases. The Pistorius case is taking place in the age of social media. Both local and international statistics generated about tweets and media mentions have been staggering, and for people around the world, Twitter is the best and sometimes only way to get up-to-the-minute information on the murder trial. Barry Bateman is a reporter for Eyewitness News and uses Twitter to break stories as they are happening. While he had a substantial following on Twitter in February 2013, it was during the fateful week of Oscar's arrest and bail hearing that he was thrown into the spotlight.
Well, on the 13th of February, I had about 9,000 followers, and on the 14th, following the shooting, I was among the first people on the scene. I was among the first people giving them information out, putting the information out there on Twitter.
Barry's speedy reporting was noticed and the public flocked to him as their go-to news source. In the days that followed, Barry's Twitter followers grew exponentially, up to 139,000 people.
But it was also helped that getting a lot of retweets, because you firstly get identified as somebody who's close to the story. I mean, I think I had retweets from Gary Lineker, for example. So because it became such a global story and you had people who have massive followings like Gary Lineker, getting a retweet from him was hugely to my advantage. I've always enjoyed social media as a means of conversation. Many people had a lot of questions. I made the point of engaging with people. If they had questions, I tried to answer them as best I could.
Amanda Sevasti Fairweather is the head of social media at Native VML and is an expert in the digital landscape. She's been following the story closely and analysing trends on the web.
Barry Bateman completely dominated the reporting of the story. When he announced Oscar getting bail, that tweet of his got over 2,300 retweets. He didn't just report on the story. He didn't act like a broadcaster. He really engaged the medium of Twitter in that he engaged with his followers and he replied to their queries. He tried to help them understand the story.
On the first day of his bail hearing, there were over 400,000 tweets about Oscar generated in South Africa.
Oh, it's just unheard of in South Africa. I mean, for 400,000 tweets in one day around one story, the only bigger trending topic has actually been Mandela. Oscar has always come second. I mean, that's on a global perspective.
Social media, even though people call it new media, behaves very much like old media. You know, it's just a much more rapid way of consuming it and seeing it, and it's always with us on our smartphones. You know, we are junkies to check something.
We're not that naive young democracy anymore. We are now on a global stage. You look at what we now have as identifiers. So Mandela, District 9, apartheid, and now Blade Runner.
You know, in the same way that Marikana was a turning point in political terms, the bail hearing was a real turning point for people who hadn't adopted social media. If you were not a social media user and you were interested in the trial, bang, suddenly you were. You know, people were listening to the 702 feed through YouTube. You know, Aki Anastasia was sitting there with a Google Hangout doing a live feed of what was coming out, and people were absolutely riveted.
I think the Oscar story has really been a catalyst for South Africans to start consuming their news in this online digital manner. And as more and more of us get access to data, as data becomes cheaper, you're going to find that South Africans are going to stop reading newspapers and they're going to get all of their news online.
Once the story broke, there was an average of 3,600 tweets every hour that included the hashtag Oscar Pistorius. Globally, the number was 9,000.
On the day that Reeva Steenkamp was killed, Google searches for her name and Oscar Pistorius' name were over 1 million. And there were also more online searches for just Oscar Pistorius than there were around Tiger Woods' infidelity or Lance Armstrong's doping scandal.
In September 2012, there were 2.4 million South African users on Twitter, and in September the following year, there were 5.5 million, an increase of 56%.
It's a massive jump. It was the biggest jump ever in 1 year, and I think that the Oscar Pistorius story hugely contributed to that jump, especially with regards to Barry Bateman and what happened with the story unfolding online.
I think we're still doing exactly what we're doing in the digital age as journalists were doing many years ago before we had cell phones and we could call in a story to the print, which later went on to filing from laptops and so on. I think we're still doing it. It's just speed, and this is one thing that, and this is not just journalism speaks for, but the digital age has changed the immediacy of just about everything in our lives. And for journalists, it just means we can get the story out there a lot quicker.
This is a story that lives and breathes and evolves online. There's analysis done on what is the public sentiment. The public sentiment isn't taken by vox pops out in the street. The public sentiment is taken from Twitter, Facebook.
An app and Twitter account called Oscar Trial Jury was launched a week after the start of the trial. It gauges public opinion and posts the results online. Over 3 weeks, the polls have slipped. South Africa doesn't have a jury system made up of 12 people, but one of thousands.
You know, I've listened to talk radio a lot in the last month or so around the trial, and it's really fascinating how, for so many people, a chance to just say one sentence or, you know, speak on the radio for a couple of minutes is like a lifelong ambition, and you know, and they take their chance. And they feel that, people feel that on social media they have a chance to communicate, be it Twitter or Facebook or, you know, where they're going. And it doesn't matter how many followers there are, people want to have their say, you know, and they do. So it in many ways is just a reflection of where life is right now, where the world is right now. And it's, you know, of course it's fixated on this courtroom in Pretoria and the kind of aggressive antics of the defense lawyer. But of course it's the making of many novels.
The court case has spawned further attention, including turning defense advocate Barry Roux into a viral sensation. Dozens of memes quoting his now famous "I put it to you" phrase have cropped up, as well as a couple of parody singles.
Because I'm clap along if you feel like mixing it with Roux. Because I'm clap along if you feel like innocence is the truth. Because I'm clap along if you really want me to put it to you. Because I'm clap along.
I put it to you that Barry Roux is the new Vernon Kukumur. There's no way that a character as abrasive and pedantic and aggressive as him could not somehow find some purchase with an audience, with a viewing public that's captivated by this really gripping trial, even though it's proceeding at the usual breakneck, boring pace of a court case.
The digital space also allows individuals to participate in the trial and share their opinions about new developments. Oscar and his team remained mute for a year after the shooting, but the silence was broken online on the anniversary of Reeva's death on Valentine's Day this year. A few weeks before the trial began, a Twitter account called Oscar Hard Truth was launched. It was touted as a platform for giving information by Pistorius' spokesperson Annalisa Burgess, but was hailed by some as unnecessary.
For the Oscar Pistorius spin team not to have a presence would be unthinkable. So it's neither good nor bad. It's necessary in this kind of very highly politicized, highly televised environment that is the world as it is today.
Controversially, several tweets generated by the account were deleted. These included, "We will address the truth and expose those with ulterior motives. The truth will prevail." In a recent statement on the OscarPistorius.com website, it was advised that the Twitter account was superfluous, as the trial was being televised and would be reactivated once the legal process had taken place.
The South African public has been exposed to the justice system like never before. One thing I did realize from the interactions with people on Twitter is that not many people quite understand how the courts work. That exposure to the whole process and the procedure, I think it's perhaps given people a greater understanding of how the justice system works, which I think is a great benefit for the country at large.
Oscar will have his day in court, and Twitter and the internet will be right behind to voice an opinion. This is the world we live in now, a closer, immediate space without borders and sometimes without rules.